What's up everyone, back for another beer review, and today I'll be reviewing a beer from Brasserie Dieu du Ciel, and they're out of Montreal, Quebec, Canada, and this is their Péché Mortel. So this is an Imperial Stout brewed with coffee that comes in at 9.5% alcohol by volume, 76 IBUs at the time of review, and this bottle is approximately 11 months old. Now, to me, when we're talking about classic North American craft beers, this is one of them. This is one of the first coffee stouts I ever had in my life back, I think it was 2011. I think they've been brewing this one since 2001, so over 20 years. And the first time I had this one, the coffee was so intense and over the top, and it was kind of a bit too much for me, but I still enjoyed it. Now, I've had this one anywhere from a couple months old to like 3.5 years old, and the sweet spot for me is about the 1-year-old mark. So that's why I picked this one up, and it's right around 11 months old. When it's fresh, like I said, the coffee's a little bit too much for me to love it. And when it ages, the coffee kind of dies out a bit. The base Imperial Stout, I think, is fantastic. So it's still a good beer. It just doesn't have the coffee oomph when it's aged. So I'm hoping that this is in the sweet spot for me, and it's still as delicious as I remember it being. Now, they have a little spiel here on the back. We'll read. It says, a rich roasted malt with vibrant coffee flavor. After the dry and bitter finish, this beer leaves a lasting impression, and also has the ingredients, which I love. Typically in Canada, they have the ingredients on the label. It says water, malted barley, sugar, wheat, coffee, hops, and yeast. So yeah, I'm real happy to finally give this a review. I also picked up their Mexican stout variant. That's way fresher than this one. It's like a couple months old right now, but I'm gonna wait a couple months to review that one just so it can age a little bit. But a lot of those a lot of those adjuncts might fall off a bit, so we'll see. I also have this Bellwood glass. It's the 2015 Motley Crue release. Haven't used this glass in a hot minute, so I figured I'd bust out a Canadian glass for a Canadian beer. So let's give it a pour here. Now, I've had numerous variants of this beer over the years. I've also had multiple barrel-aged variants of this beer, and I've enjoyed the vast majority of them. I still think the base is my favorite, probably, especially when it's right in the realm of a year old and just doing what it does for me. So anyway, yeah. So it didn't pour out pitch black. It's more dark brown. On camera, it's gonna look pitch black. Hold up the light, it's pitch black, but definitely more of a dark brown. It had about maybe a half to 3/4 of a finger of this dark brown colored head, dissipating a little bit, but not all the way. Give a little bit of swirl. Alcohol sheets, 9.5%. It's definitely very noticeable. But yeah, so that looks nice, and let's get a nose. Yeah. So the coffee's still there. Like, we talk about it, or I talk about it a lot, and I know others do, like where adjuncts can fall off. Depending on the adjunct, depending on how they're used, sometimes coffee will turn into that green pepper kind of vibe. Sometimes it won't fall off. This is beer that I've never had it fall off to the point where it's astringent and a different flavor like a green pepper. It just falls off in intensity. And right now it's in the beautiful state of almost perfection for what I want out of the coffee. It's a sweeter coffee because it's dying out a little bit and it's mixing with that base stout. And that base stout has like sweeter dark chocolate. It has a lot of roasted malt, has a little bit of vanilla, like dark fruits as well. But it smells so I don't drink straight on black coffee typically. I put a little bit of milk and sugar typically. Not a lot, but maybe like 1 sugar and 1 cream, or maybe 2 creams and a sugar. Something where it's a little bit sweeter. And that's where this kind of is falling right now. But yeah, it's roasted malt, almost like a charred malt kind of nose to it. Almost smoky-esque. But you get the dark chocolate, the coffee's there. It's more like a medium roast kind of coffee. The dark fruits hit, a little bit of vanilla, maybe a touch of like a molasses. Not as big on like the caramel and toffee and like brown sugar kind of malt vibes. Yeah, it smells like a cup of coffee with cream and a couple sugars. That's kind of what it smells like. And it smells so inviting. It doesn't have any booziness from it. It's almost 10%. Yeah, it just smells in a perfect state for what I want out of this beer. So let's get into it. Cheers, everyone. It's a delicious beer. And the beauty about it, and this is something that I didn't even used to appreciate, is it does have that dry, bitter finish they talk about. We haven't talked about the label. I'm trying to ignore the fact that they changed the label. I'd like to know where you kind of fall, but they changed the label, what was it, maybe a couple years ago? I do not like the new label. I don't like their new labels in general, me personally speaking. The old ones just had that classic look to them. Like, you knew it was like a vintage beer. Like, I just love that. Same thing with Aphrodisiac or Aphrodite. I think they changed that label. And if not, I hope they didn't, but I'm pretty sure. I haven't seen that beer in a while, so I don't know if they changed it, but they definitely changed this one. And I mean, it's not, here's the thing. I don't think the label's bad or like the artwork. I just think when you had such a classic, great label, why mess with it? I don't know. My own personal opinion. I'd like to hear what you think. Buying this one, higher side of medium, lower side of full. Nice for 9.5. The mouthfeel, it has a nice moderate carbonation, but it's really smooth, slightly creamy. It's kind of what you want. Okay, so I was talking about how this in the wheelhouse of a year is kind of in my realm, and I don't think this is as good as I remember it being around a year old, and that's because this is still very coffee centric, and it is a little bit more dry and bitter than I remember aging it for almost a year. That might be music to your ears if you like that. I like the bitterness nowadays, but I think the coffee still at 11 months old might be a little bit too like in my face, right? So right at the forefront, first thing that hits me is coffee. And it's like medium roast coffee. It just hits me. It's roasted coffee. Underneath that, it's like a dark, like 50-60% cacao bar. There's a roasted malt that's almost smoky. There's a little bit of caramel and toffee I wasn't getting in the nose. A little bit there. A little bit of molasses, slight sweet malt. As it passes through, the coffee starts dissipating a bit. But then in the back of the palate, I get this earthy, dry, bitter finish. So it's semi-full-on dry with a moderate bitterness. So in conjunction with the bitterness and the dryness, it kind of overtakes the malt goodness a little bit. Now, don't get me wrong. This is still a very tasty and quite delicious in even in its current state in this bottle. It's just, it's not right where I want it in that sweet spot. I think this maybe needs another like 4 to 6 months to get right to where I like it, where the base beer is kind of propped up a little bit more and the coffee's knocked down a bit. Still quite tasty. 9.5%, warming in the chest, nothing on the palate. 76 IBUs, you definitely detect 76 IBUs at this point. I think, again, if you're going to pick up an Imperial Stout with coffee, yeah, like this is great for what they're going for. If you like coffee stouts or Imperial coffee stouts, here's the thing. If you've never had this one before and you can get your hands on it, like grab it. Again, this is, to me, a classic, right? I think the base stout is fantastic. I think the coffee is hit or miss for me on how it works depending on its age. And that's kind of where I'm at. Rating on this, let me go one more sip and I'm going to lock in a rating. Pouring in the goodies. Bumped up the sweetness very slightly. More in the realm of what I'm accustomed to at almost a year old, but not still to that level. So I'm going to give this an appropriate rating on the bottle I'm drinking and not what I typically think about this. Because what I typically think about this, to me, this is like 4.5 out of 5 all day long when it's in the sweet spot. When it's fresh, typically gets like a high 4, low 4. And when it's aged, kind of a high 4, low 4.25. This, though, is kind of right in between there. So Péché Mortel from Dieu du Ciel. I have absolutely no issues whatsoever. I'm going to give this a straight out 4.25 out of 5. I think that's where this one lands for me as we speak. And keep in mind, this is an 11-month-old bottle. And, your mileage may vary depending upon how fresh your bottle is. If you get it two months old or a couple weeks old if you're in Quebec, or if you're drinking this one, an aged one you found on a dusty shelf, it's going to be a different experience based on the intensity of the coffee and how it works, right? The thing about this is almost a year old, no green pepper astringency from the coffee. It's held up quite well. The coffee needs to fall off maybe another like 10% for me, maybe 15 to get right in that wheelhouse of what I enjoy. So price and availability here in Buffalo, New York, I think I paid like $4.29 for that bottle. And I think 4 packs were $16, somewhere in that realm. For a 9.5% Imperial coffee stout for, around $4 a bottle, that's a pretty good deal. I'm sure it's cheaper in Quebec. And it might be cheaper in your neck of the woods depending upon where you are. It might be more expensive, who knows? But here it's about $16 a 4-pack. And availability, really don't know with Dieu du Ciel, but I'm pretty sure they get great distro, even like overseas and in Europe and stuff. I'm pretty sure they get decent distro. So if you have ever seen this current label or the old label and you passed it by and you never picked it up, give it a go, especially if you like coffee beers. I don't think you'll be disappointed. Maybe you will be. I don't know. We all have different palates, but I've always enjoyed this one. The lowest rating I've ever given to one of these is like a 4. And I think that speaks volumes of how good this beer is in general. And again, I've never had a bad batch of the base where like anything went awry. So kudos to them for that. And I'm going to review that Mexican stout variant probably in the next month or two. I'll probably, give it a little bit of age because I think that one right now as we speak is like 2 months old. I don't want to drink it super fresh. Then again, there's a bunch of adjuncts in it. I don't want to drink it a year old because I know a lot of the adjuncts, like the peppers and the cinnamon and stuff, will probably fall off. I want to kind of get to it relatively fresh. So we'll see. Anyway, if you've had this one before, post in the comment section. Let me know what you think about it. If you had any of the variants or the barrel-aged versions, let me know what's your favorite, and appreciate everybody stopping by for another beer review here on the Beer Patrol. To the next one. Cheers.